bases dropped a little earlier than normal if you were up last night watching CONCACAF Champions League, and we'll get into that. Monterrey is your CONCACAF Champions League final, our last little bit of CCL fever for 2019. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's soccer down here. It's a Thursday. It's Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. That means we're taking your thoughts on whatever you want to have thoughts about. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. Join the conversation there. Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic will be joining the conversation at 9:30. He has an article primed and ready to go over at The Athletic about Atlanta United that we'll talk about, among other things. But we're going to start with the continuation of our conversation from yesterday about the U.S. women's national team and the roster announcement. We now know that it will come out at 1 o'clock today. It'll be on the U.S. women's national team social media channels, U.S. soccer social media channels, I think on YouTube as well. It sounds like there is some sort of a production for this announcement. But the leaks have already started. And that was one, it's never a good look. And two, the first one, not really a surprise. We talked about it yesterday. Ali Krieger will likely, according to the leaks, be part of the U.S. women's national team roster for the World Cup. That was brought up by Doug McIntyre of Yahoo Sports. No big surprise. The options at outside back have not been vetted, honestly. They just haven't played. And when you don't have many options and you have Kelly O'Hara, who has played 62 minutes in the NWSL this season, hasn't started a match, you turn to the veteran, Ali Krieger. She should have been there before, I think, but she hasn't been. The bigger surprise is seemingly out of nowhere, Morgan Bryan, 26 years old, from South Georgia, has been brought back into the team. She had one appearance this year in January against France. She wasn't part of the She Believes Cup roster. She's had a number of injuries over the years, and her form has been very inconsistent because of that. She's played 3 times for the Chicago Red Stars with 1 start. According to Stephen Goff of the Washington Post, she will make the roster, and she had really not been part of this conversation. That likely means that Andy Sullivan of the Washington Spirit, McCall Zerboni of the North Carolina Courage, and defender Casey Short are going to miss this roster. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. The deadline for rosters, official rosters being submitted, is May 24th. There is a little bit of wiggle room here. You have 2 matches before you get to that deadline. May 12th versus South Africa in Santa Clara, May 16th versus New Zealand in St. Louis, and then May 26th versus Mexico at Red Bull Arena. That's after the deadline. There's still the potential that something changes. Injury could be one thing that could cause that, and this is an opportunity, I think, for Kelly O'Hara, Morgan Bryan, a few others to show that, okay, they're ready to go for this. We'll see. I'm curious to see if the way this is handled at 1 o'clock today, John. Do you get a final? Is it brought out as a final roster, or is it brought out as a roster maybe with Zerboni, Sullivan, Short, who knows else, a couple others additional that come in? Camp starts this weekend. Train, maybe get a game here, and then a final decision is made closer to the deadline. With the questions you have at a few spots, I would leave a little wiggle room, to be honest, because you've got the time.
Yeah, I would call this a provisional roster, or whatever term you want to use, because of lack of reps, because of injury history, those kinds of things. I would leave this with as much wiggle room as you can give yourself. And then when you get to the deadline in 22 days, then come up with your final roster and sit there and say, okay, we've gone from the provisional roster to here's what it's going to stack up to be, just because of what you have been discussing here and the concerns. And I feel like a legal document and the concerns therein when it comes to the players that we've been talking about here. So yeah, if I was Jill Ellis and I was the women's national team, make it a provisional roster and then go forward, so you're not pinning yourself into a corner with some of the names that we brought up.
Yeah, and you can absolutely do that because even after the deadline, if there is an injury and it is approved by FIFA as an injury that would result in a roster change, you can do that. So it wouldn't be bad to have 24, 25 as part of this for now. We'll see how it gets handled. I'm curious to see the messaging coming out of this. Allison Lee, who covers Sky Blue specifically for Once a Metro and covers the women's game in the United States for a number of outlets, has a really good point. If the rumors are true and Morgan Bryan, who is reportedly still dealing with lingering pain, made the squad over a healthy McCall Zerboni, it's a shame. Not so much Bryan has a World Cup win. She's been there. She might have another shot. She's 26, probably have another shot to get there. The lingering pain is the biggest issue I have. Alongside that, this is probably McCall's last chance at getting to a World Cup. And they're different players. I think Morgan Bryan, healthy, is a great two-way midfielder, a very technical player, a very strong player, a very big part of this national team in the past. I think Zerboni gives you something that you don't necessarily have in the middle of the field. And I think you need that grit in this team. It would be useful in certain matches. I would like to see her as part of this team. If Bryan's still dealing with pain, that's an even bigger question mark at this stage.
Yeah, and for me, I will be the first person to sit there and wave my hand in the air like I just don't care when it comes to having the grit and sandpaper of McCall Zerboni as a part of the roster. But yeah, I mean, you look at the health questions and you look at the lack of minutes. And yes, I understand experience, and yes, I understand having them as a part of a roster for an international competition. But I think at times, you have to sit there and just, let's be realistic. If something hasn't fixed itself or presented itself to be 100% in this 3-week window, and make choices from individuals who are just as worthy to represent your country than you currently have on the sheet. So I'm all for having grit and sandpaper because I think that that's something that the women's national team at times hasn't had enough of. And so I point at the bottom of the alphabet as much as humanly possible, and I have for like the last 6 months or so. Having someone like a McCall Zerboni on this roster for me is would be something that I would enjoy watching, just to have a different element of the women's national team. But once again, we've got 1:00 Eastern, and then add 3 weeks to it. But like you say, I want to see how this is presented, and I want to see how this is laid out, as if it's the be all end all, or if there is some elements that you can sit there and say, okay, well, if A, then B. So we are at T-minus 3 hours and 50 minutes as you and I are talking right now. And like I said, and like you have emphasized, I want to see how this is laid out. I want to see how this is presented. And I want to see if you have the roster of rosters, or if you have a couple of others who are involved in the process.
John D. Halloran, another Twitter follow for you as you're getting ready for the Women's World Cup. John D. Halloran writes for American Soccer Now, the Equalizer, with another great point. And this is, I think, an even bigger issue because it's more about structure as opposed to individual names on the sheet of paper. If the roster projections are accurate, Ellis is taking 7 defenders for 4 positions in the back and 7 forwards for 3 positions up top. Halloran feels like that's a mistake, especially with only 3 real outside backs, one of whom is exceptionally injury-prone. 7 forwards for 3 spots. It feels like one too many. You're going to play a front 3. You have some different needs from the central player in the front 3 as opposed to the wide players. Yeah, you need a backup as the central. I'm 100% on board with that. You need backups out wide. I think you could probably, especially because of that injury-prone issue, I think you could go with 6 forwards and 8 defenders for 4 spots and have a little more cover. I think with this roster, you'd probably rather have an extra outside back than an extra forward.
Yes.
because you're not going to see, if everybody stays healthy, your front line is pretty well established with Alex Morgan, with Megan Rapinoe, with Tobin Heath. Kristen Press will fight for time, and she'll be an option off the bench. Maybe in some games she'll get a start and flip it, and Rapinoe will come off the bench. But you're pretty well established. You need an extra outside back if you're taking, and I think you have to take Kelly O'Hara because of what she brings you if she's healthy. And now she's got, about 6 weeks to get healthy with an ankle injury, and she's played some. You would think that if she's managed correctly in camp, that by the time the tournament starts in mid-June, she'll be ready to go. You would think. You can't guarantee that. And, yes, injury-prone. So it'd be nice to have an outside back as additional cover. If it comes down to taking an extra forward or a player like Casey Short or one of the other options at outside back, I think you have to take the extra outside back.
Yes. Yeah,
Again,
for me,
we'll see how it's presented. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to show. I want to shore up things defensively. So in those numbers, with what we've been discussing over the last day plus, I want the extra defender more than I want the extra forward.
I think you have to with the injury issues and with the tournament that, it's an interesting one the way it lays out for the U.S. because you get the first 2 matches in group play that you should handle pretty easily. But then your third group game leads you straight into the knockouts. And you don't have that early test. I kind of wish the Sweden game was first. So you get that test, and you say, okay, well, we got to tweak this. We've got 2 games to work through it. Okay, cool. Now we're in a better position to go to the knockout. Because if you're not hitting on all cylinders and you go to the Sweden match and get beat or play poorly, then you're going into the knockouts with a lack of confidence and you're in trouble. And you could be facing France in the quarterfinal after the round of 16. Round of 16 should be another match that you can take care of with, a pretty good level of comfort. But then you're probably looking at France in Paris in the quarterfinal. I'm concerned about the way this whole preparation has gone. And it takes you back to the bigger picture here. There's no general manager in place. What the relationship here is going to be between a technical director and an April Heinrichs and a general manager and the manager, we don't know yet. We don't know what the leadership has been like. We don't know if Jill Ellis is making these decisions in a vacuum, if she's talking to Heinrichs about it, if they're involved in the decision and figuring out what they're going to do. It feels like the matches in the last year have just been friendlies, not preparation for a World Cup. They've just been a series of games that mean nothing. And they can't be. On the women's side, I think you have a very unique opportunity with the U.S. because you play a lot of matches. You can try a lot of things. You can look at a good number of players. And we talked about it yesterday. I don't know if the CBA makes that difficult. If it does, it's something that has to change because it can't be a limitation on who you bring in and who you don't bring in. You have to look deeper into the roster. You shouldn't feel like your back's against the wall and you have to turn to Allie Krieger if you had ruled her out 2 years ago from being part of this team. Now, things happen. We've seen this before on the men's side, on the women's side, across the board. Shannon Box was brought in 2015 late. She played, I think, 1 substitute appearance in the tournament, but her leadership was very important. She was brought in after kind of being out in the wilderness of the national team pool. It happens. Sometimes there's injuries. Sometimes things happen. I don't think this pool was developed from the end of the Olympics. I don't think there was a strategy to getting ready for 2019. That's my issue with it. The pool is not dramatically different than it was then. You didn't take the opportunity to look at players in the NWSL who have performed and deserve the opportunity. It's like they don't exist in the U.S. women's national team pool. And you're bringing a player back who I think Allie Krieger is still a very good player, but you didn't think she was good enough to be part of the team over the last 2 years. And now you're bringing her back into a role where she's really your primary backup for Kelly O'Hara, who hasn't started in NWSL this season, has been dealing with an ankle injury for a while, and you're hoping she's going to be ready to go for game one. She should be, but should and hoping are the key words. It feels like they haven't put in the work to prepare, and that's the frustrating part. I think this roster is going to expose some even deeper issues in the women's national team program that have to be answered with a general manager being hired, with clear leadership being defined, and with a plan going forward. Because if you don't, Spain has a plan, Germany has a plan, England has a plan, France has a plan, Australia has a plan, Japan has a plan. Many, many countries around the world are not just throwing players together, putting them in national team jerseys, and saying, go play like they used to. They have strategic plans to win the Women's World Cup. I don't know if the U.S. does. And that's a shame, because the U.S. has every opportunity to be the dominant powerhouse in the women's game, and they have been. But if you don't plan for this, and everybody else is planning and building, you're going to get caught out. And I hope that doesn't start this summer. But these types of things worry me about it. I mean, the other side is just these leaks coming out last night. I mean, it was like the Allie Krieger one hits late yesterday in the afternoon. It's like, okay, not a huge shock. Okay, get it. That kind of been leaning that way. Then the Morgan Bryan one hits. And it's like, wow, okay, two different reporters, two different leaks. What in the world's going on? It doesn't feel organized.
No. How many countries did you name that you're fairly certain had plans coming into winning a World Cup just now?
Just off the top of my head, 7 or 8.
And how many of those 7 or 8 were not the United States?
All of them.
Yes. And for me, to your point, it just seems like they're just, I mean, going through the motion seems somewhat hackneyed as a phrase. But for me, it doesn't feel like, A, there was any kind of a plan. B, you're going to sit there and just have the names and the faces and the experience, and you're having this inherent trust that, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll be fine. With the world catching up with you as much as it is, we'll be fine doesn't seem to be an appropriate plan right now. And I think, to your point, there is a sense, or there should be a sense, of a larger concern about the recruitment. Well, recruitment may not necessarily be the right word, but the bringing in of players to assemble a talent pool, to get you a roster, to have a chance to win a World Cup. And it brings up all of these questions about a chain of command, about player recruitment, about having something assembled for something that is as important as this is on the world stage. And this might be that one tournament where the U.S. we'll put everything together with everybody that I know and we'll be fine, might finally be exposed for not being fine. And I think that whatever the end result is, I think that the women's national team needs to look at how it puts itself together and figure out how you got to change things. I mean, are you trusting one side of individuals more than you are others when it comes to putting rosters together? I have a lot of questions about how this is being put together. I understand why Jill Ellis has gone the direction that she has.
I don't.
I will. I mean, if you don't have, and I'm just looking at this from the outside, I see a stagnation.
But who created that stagnation?
And that's my largest issue here. And if you're working within the framework that's there, I don't know why it's still the same way that it is. And I'm going, and I'm having a hard time enunciating stagnation right now, and wondering why you've sat on this as long as you have and haven't gone in a direction to change things when the world is catching up with you. Trusting in your instincts, and it's just like, look, and how can you go this long without having a plan and just trusting your instincts and trusting what you have in front of you? Yes, we have all these tremendous players. Yes, we have all these great athletes. Yes, we have all of this.
Let's get to that part. Let's stop there for a second. All these great players. U17 Women's World Cup record. Now, it doesn't always guarantee. A good performance at the youth level doesn't always guarantee what you're going to be. But U17 Women's World Cup record for the United States. 2010, didn't qualify. 2012, didn't get out of the group stage. Didn't lose, 1 win, 2 draws. 2014, didn't qualify. 2016, didn't get out of the group stage. 2018, didn't get out of the group stage. The U20s. Okay. Let's look back a little bit here. U20 World Cup, 2014, knocked out in the quarterfinals. 2016, 4th place in the tournament. 2018, didn't make it out of the group stage. Also in 2018, and this is significant, you didn't win the CONCACAF U20. Mexico beat you. Canada had beaten you twice back in the 2000s, but at 2018, Mexico won their first U20 women's championship. So you're not getting out of the group stage at Youth World Cups. You have talent, but they're not performing at that level.
Right.
Now, you have a women's professional league, but you're not necessarily turning to players who are outside of these youth national team failures. To get out of a group stage at a Youth World Cup is a failure for the United States.
Yes.
You're not turning to players who developed outside of that or maybe didn't get the look or developed later, what have you. The pool is very narrow, and it is limiting. And my biggest issue is there's a lack of leadership from the top with the federation. And when you don't have that, and you have a manager who I think is still kind of struggling to figure out how to make the best of what she has to work with, and I don't think Jill Ellis has done a good job of looking for alternatives in the pool. And either that's her, either that's the CBA, it's somewhere in between, whatever. You have stagnation. But Ellis is part of that. The Federation is part of that. The lack of a general manager just because, oh, no, we're good. We'll just get through the World Cup and we'll be fine. That's a part of that. There's a lot of things that are factoring into this. And now it feels like you need a team to play above its head to do well this summer. And the United States women's national team program should not be in that situation. You have more resources than any other country in the world for women's soccer, and they're not being used properly. It's time for a real strategic planning process for the youth national teams. Should not be getting knocked out in the group stage of tournaments. They should not be losing in CONCACAF. The senior national team should be using the NWSL as a resource.
Yes.
Not thinking of it as an afterthought.
Yeah.
These
that
things
to me
have to change.
That to me is one of the larger points in all of this. It feels like this talent pool that you have at your disposal with the professional league in your country is just kind of off to the side, and it's not getting any kind of review by anyone on the national in the national organization. And it's just over here, and it should be an amazing resource, but it's not being used. And for me, I think that's one of the frustrations in all of this is that, when you're looking at an Andy Sullivan or McCall Zerboni, I would think that those are two examples of what the NWSL could give the national team. And you're just still kind of, I have the question mark thought bubbles over my head as to wondering, what are you people doing? And they're not doing much.
No. I mean, a player like Zerboni is a prime example of this. So 9 caps for the U.S. women's national team. She had played for the U.S. U17s in 2003, called up to the senior team at the end of 2017. Oldest player to earn her first cap for the U.S. women's national team, 2 months shy of her 31st birthday. Got some caps in 2018, had the broken elbow late in 2018. She's come back into the team. She's played. It's just, you shouldn't be ruling a player like this out, in my opinion, because Zerboni's been an excellent professional. Yeah, she wasn't part of the pool in the U17 group. That happens. How many times do you see around the world players develop a little bit later? Players who were developed physically at a younger age then fade away. They don't make it. You can count the number of superstars at the U17 level that don't make it. It's huge. You don't know their names, but it happens in every country all around the world. It's just part of the game. You can't rule a player like Zerboni out. I think she just adds so much to this group, and for her to not be part of it is disappointing. There's still talent. This is still a team that is among the most talented in the world. And that's maybe the most frustrating thing about it, is that even with, I think, mistakes being made, they still have the talent to win the tournament. And you just hope that happens. 2015, it kind of felt like things fell into place for the U.S., and injuries and suspensions kind of had you find a lineup that worked really well, and you rode it all the way to a title. Whatever it takes, the talent's there. I think anything less than a championship is going to be a disappointment, the way everything has been leading towards. And more, it's looking like there's going to be a disappointment.
Yep.
I hope there's not. I hope that things come together. We'll see what the lineup, or we'll see what the roster looks like at 1 o'clock today. I do think, regardless of how things come out this summer, a strategic plan and a general manager and all of the things that are there on the men's side need to be there on the women's side, and things need to start pushing into a new modern direction. We'll see what happens. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, get Felipe Cardenas on the line. He's got an article getting ready to drop over at The Athletic about Atlanta United. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Kansas City coming up on Sunday right after this.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience, an ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, catching up with our friend Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic, adjusting to the new life of covering the game on a full-time basis. It can be a little time-consuming there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People are like, oh, must be glamorous. And listen, it's awesome. I love it. I'm like last week, I'm looking over a freshly mowed pitch here at the Atlanta United training grounds. It's a beautiful day for soccer. But yeah, days fly by, and I'm chasing stories. You're going through transcriptions. You're pitching stories. We have editorial staff meetings, and all of a sudden, it's 5:30, and you realize that you still have plenty to do. So, second week in and adjusting to about 15 years of going to an office every day. It takes some getting used to, but I couldn't be happier.
Before we go into the actual soccer discussion about where you are, let's go back to the weekend and talk about the athletic version of Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic and the fundraiser for Soccer in the Streets. Have you recovered yet?
Today I feel the best I've felt all week, honestly. I'm not walking like a 80-year-old man. I got out of bed and my calves and my quads didn't hurt. I was in a lot of pain Monday, Tuesday especially. But it was great. Yeah, getting out there on Sunday, to support such a wonderful organization. I saw both of you out there. I know Jason, for especially, you're so involved, and I think together, the tournament and just everyone involved raised up to $50,000. So it was really successful. And then on the field, it was great. I played on Team Colombia. We matched up in our group against a team from the Netherlands and Germany, and we lost our first match against the Netherlands 4-2, and then beat Iceland, and then I think who else? We beat Germany, so we advanced, and then lost in the semifinals to the UK. So it was fun. It got chippy at the end there. It got chippy at the end against the Brits. But it was a great time. I hadn't played in a long time, and every time I go out and play, I realize how much I love the sport.
Yeah, it's no surprise that Colombia and the UK would be chippy based off the last World Cup,
right?
No shock.
It was kind of revenge for us. It was revenge, a little bit of revenge, and we didn't take advantage. But yeah, I definitely, before that game kicked off, I told a guy on the team, another Colombian, and I was like, oh yeah, like this is our rematch. This is a revenge game. He was like, no, we're not playing Holland, who had beaten us, in the opening match that morning. I'm like, no, we're playing England. And he was like, yes.
Oh, wait, didn't you score in the last match?
I did not, no. I played in the back. I was just working. I was working with LGP's brother, Nico, and he listening to anything he told me. He was like, I would get a sub, and I was tired in the other games, and I'd get a sub. And when I came back on, he was like, don't you dare ask for another sub. Stay out here with me. And I'm like, all right.
Got to keep that organization, especially in the back. Come on, Felipe.
Come on, exactly. I know.
Got to ride that out. All right, let's get to the other field over at Mercedes-Benz, and what happened Saturday. Colorado comes in very defensive. Not exactly a surprise. I think we all expected that. Maybe not a 5-4-1 because the Colorado Rapids had not shown that up to that point. It didn't work ultimately. It did slow the game down. It did create some issues for Atlanta United. Now that we're a few days away from it, what did you think about that Rapids match from an Atlanta perspective?
Yeah, well, I thought they dealt with a bunker defense pretty well in the first, opening 30, 35 minutes. You could even say the first half. I thought that Atlanta really came out and the tactic was to try, to break that down with quick passing, with PT and Barco really, rotating in and out from their wide positions and into the central midfield. And a player like Julian Gressel really, making a lot of, line breaking runs into the box, and there were some chances, and the pace was good. I think from what I heard in the team hotel, in Colorado's team hotel on Friday night, I was there. They had their game plan was exactly what we saw. It was an attempt to ride out for a point, and play defensively, or maybe kind of steal a game at the end, and honestly frustrate Atlanta United. I think that's the first thing. I think we forget that when players are out there, the fans, from the fans' perspective, they're like, they're concerned that Atlanta can't break down a defense. They're not getting chances. They're not converting. On the pitch, it's the same thing is happening. And a team like Colorado that had nothing to lose, obviously we know that now, especially with the manager being fired yesterday. But they wanted to play the psychological game as well, and face a team that they understood in their own version, their own story. In Atlanta United was struggling as well, and try to frustrate them. And I think it really worked up until the 70th minute or so, when Frank de Boer made some changes and really tired legs in the back for Colorado. That was the difference. So, I think that's something that goes back to when Tata was here as well. Teams come in and sit back, and it's difficult. It's difficult for any team in the world to beat 8 to 9 defenders, and you kind of walk away thinking like, wow, we played great and we really dominated. That's why Frank, mentioned several times in this post-game press conference that, the star players, the creative players, the guys that are here for Atlanta that this club has paid so much money for, they're the ones that need to step up. That's how these types of games are won, when one player creates a chance for himself and scores. That's what demoralizes a team that showed up to play defense. So that's what is expected from Atlanta United moving forward when they face a team like this, in the future.
Let me get into one of those guys, Darlington Nagbe, and we saw Darlington in a couple of different places on the pitch against Colorado, but it was one of those performances where you just sit there and you nod your head and the thumbs up in the press box. You sit there and go, "Yep, that's why he's here." When you look back at Darlington's performance, what are some of your takeaways from last weekend?
Yeah, well, Darlington's a great player. He's just so clean on the ball. His quickness is probably underrated. In that kind of that one-on-one, tight space type of matchup. And he can play in multiple positions as he did last season, and really as he has since he really came into this league. And against Colorado, he was a key player for Frank de Boer, because Frank has kind of an embarrassment of riches. It's what the same thing, the same situation with Tata. It's a good problem to have, and so when he needs to move people around, you have a player like Darlington that honestly can play anywhere on the pitch, anywhere. You can probably ask him to play in the back and he'll do well. You can ask him to play as a false 9, and I think he'll do well there as well. He can play as a number 10, or play on the wing. He's that good of a player, and that's Frank de Boer resorted to that against Colorado when he had to. He moved him away from his central midfield position, where his responsibility in the beginning was to maintain a solid defensive position, recover, distribute. And when they needed the goal, they moved him out wide and asked him to, essentially play as a wing back and defend a little bit. But also, from what he told me and the other, members of the media post game, Darlington was asked to go 1v1, and take a man on, which is something that, Breck Shea, I'll say this about Breck. I think he has been, serviceable at the left back position, and considering why he was brought into this club. He wasn't brought in to start. He was brought in to compete, and he has the experience and the skill to start, to be on the pitch. But he's not the same player that he was when taking guys on 1v1 was part of his DNA, was part of his game. Now, in open space, he can really provide a good ball, and he can maintain possession. But in that a game like what we saw on Saturday is you need players that are anxious to take their man on and get to the end line and provide service, and that's what Darlington did. So, the Darlington-Nagbe 2019 story is going to be a very interesting one because he's very, very valuable to this team, and it looks like his future here in Atlanta is not settled yet. And so, if I'm Frank DeBoer, I'm going to get as much out of him as I possibly can, moving forward.
Let's go down the road with Nagbe a little bit. Frank DeBoer mentioned Barcelona, and we've talked about this before, where you have a team like Atlanta United. Some opponents are going to come into your building and play this way. Some opponents are going to play this way against you in their building, but generally it's going to be when you're at home, they're on the road. They're going to sit. They're going to defend. You have to break them down because the game becomes a series of 1v1 battles. Nagbe, to me, his role with Atlanta kind of mirrors the role of an Andres Iniesta for Barcelona. He's not the man. He's not Messi. He's not the player that you expect to break everything down. But Messi can't do that every game, and he can't do that in every part of the field. Nagbe's that guy who can get you out of trouble in the back, but he can also deliver the killer ball in the attacking side of it. His versatility seems to be something that Frank DeBoer has immediately recognized, and he moves him around on the field to create those advantages.
Yeah, it's true. I think the ruthless, line splitting ball in the final third is something that, I've said in the past that he could improve on, having kind of that killer instinct.
Definitely.
And, I think you look at a guy like Pity Martinez, and that's exactly what he has. He's been doing it for years. Darlington doesn't have that type of personality. He has the ability, obviously, and he's shown that at times while he's played for Atlanta United, and even for the U.S. national team, like throughout his career. But I think the people that I've spoken to that have covered him for a long time, coming into this season, knowing that Miguel Almiron was not going to be here, that was the big question for Darlington. Can he, be a little bit more aggressive in the final third? I wrote about that, in the importance of him and Remedi in the midfield. In order for them to really, elevate this team's play, both of them are going to have to be a little bit more, aggressive in their decision making on the offensive third. So he did that. On Saturday, he showed that he can do it. And to your point, I think, he's extremely important, to Frank DeBoer, moving forward.
And you'd mentioned Breck, and I want to get into PT a little bit. And when you see his game, I know in his mind he wants to be out there 90 minutes, and he wants to be out there, pedal down fifth gear, and give you everything that he has. Where is he, I guess, in his progression coming off of the knock and getting integrated into everything? When you look at PT's progression, what are you staring at these days when it comes to PT Martinez?
Yeah, well, I have a piece coming out for the Athletic Soccer, most likely later this morning after the show, which, I really go take a deep dive into PT Martinez and Ezequiel Barco in the number 10 position and who's most, who's best suited to play there right now for Atlanta United. And one of the things that I go into and is his fitness, and not to say he's not fit, but what is a PT Martinez fully fit, really engaged, comfortable, look like? And I found an interesting video of a match against Boca Juniors in what they call the Torneo de Verano, which is kind of like the preseason tournaments that they play in January in Argentina. And it's just it's in the piece. So wait for that to come out and look at it, because it's a different type of player that we're seeing now, and it's a player that PC has the ability, and he's done it to literally run the entire pitch. He can defend. People talk about he's not able to defend. Well, watch the video that I'm going to put in that piece today. Can he play as a 10 and put his foot on the ball and slow it down? Yeah, watch the video that I included in that piece today. Can he take players on 1v1 from a flank? Of course he can. And he's done that here in Atlanta United. I think, to your point, John, I think you're right. I think his foot is on the pedal at all times. And I think that is what's forcing him to press a little bit. Knowing that MLS, the pace is a little bit higher than what he may be used to. The Primera División in Argentina is fast paced, but there are always moments of a little bit of calm, of a little bit of like more, tactical discipline on the ball. In countries around South America and Central America, it's called, la pausa. It's like that moment in a game where there's a break, and that doesn't happen in MLS very often. And I think he's getting used to that. I think that's when people say, "Oh, he's adjusting to his new league," and you want to question that. I think that's where you need to look. He needs to understand, what is the pace of play here? How does the ball move on the turf? What are the players? What are my opponents doing in relation to how the game is moving? I think he's getting used to that. So, yeah, he had in the 70 minutes he played against Colorado, I thought he showed some pretty brilliant flashes of his ability. And like I mentioned in the piece that I keep plugging, if some of the chances,
as you should,
and some of the chances that he has created for Atlanta United had been converted, we would be having a totally different conversation about Pity Martinez right now.
Yeah, 100%. So I had a question this morning over on 92.9 The Game from John Fricke and Hugh Douglas, and I want to get your take on it. Barco's going to be joining Argentina's U20 team unless something completely falls apart. And not sure exactly when, but it's coming up very soon. In this last match, Barco started out wide. Pity started as a 10. Felt like second half that changed a little bit more in the run of play. We've seen Nagbe play the 10 in New England for the first 10, 11 minutes before the Remedi injury. When Barco is gone, do you think that it just becomes Pity as the 10 or the playmaker? Do you think it's Nagbe? Do you think it's maybe a little bit of a mix and match based off the opponent?
Yeah, it's probably a mix and match, but Pity's the 10. If Frank de Boer is going to stick to what he said post-game when I asked him, does this team have a 10? And I wasn't trying to bait Frank de Boer. It was an honest question, like what within his philosophy, his footballing philosophy, his tactical system, is there a true number 10? And he was adamant that it's Gonzalo El Pity Martinez. And so it's going to be him when Barco is not around, when he's at the World Cup. How the number 10 role, it really functions within the system when Barco is not here, or in general, that's the question. And I think you're right, Jason. Exactly. I think, Nagbe can play as a 10. And I think when they don't have the Barco's abilities, which they will miss, that's when a player like Tito Villalba really can step in and they take advantage of that type of, player profile where you have a little bit more of a way to play direct. Franco Escobar told me after the game, what they're lacking a little bit is that verticality, the ability to stretch the field. Because a player like Tito, he didn't mention Tito, but it's just because there's a player like Tito that's not there all the time, and so it's just a lot of adjustments will be made. I think in the summer, that relationship between Nagbe and Remedi, it really has to come together. I think the time that Eric Remedi has been off the field has slowed that process down a little bit, but I would expect to see them pushing a little bit forward, moving Nagbe a little bit, closer to PT, closer to Joseph, and more of a dual, like kind of not a box to box 8, but a little bit more forward advanced number 8. And Nagbe mentioned after the game as well, like they see what PT can do in practice, and he's, I think his quote was, "When I have the ball, I'm looking for him." So that's going to be your 10 moving forward, PT Martinez.
Let's take it a step further, because I think this is a pretty important distinction as we wrap up with Felipe Cardenas of the Athletic. I think a lot of times we talk about a number 10 in kind of an old school way, like a Carlos Valderrama. You know, you're playing to Carlos Valderrama at all times. You want him pulling the strings, period. That's what you want. I think Pity Martinez can be the 10 for this team, but not in that way necessarily. I think it might look a little bit different at times, and it doesn't mean he has to be in the middle of the field. When you have a Barco, when you have a Nagbe who can give some of that playmaking ability and maybe take a little bit of the pressure off and help Pity find those better spots to be a playmaker. I don't think it's rigid like it used to be.
No,
Fair?
it's not. It's fair. You know, I think, you know, even a player like Jorge Valdano, you know, a tremendous legendary player for Argentina, Real Madrid, you know, he has talked about the evolution of the number 10, you know, consistently the last few years. And I'll tell you, you know, speaking of Colombia, the player that he brings up as one of those last, you know, kind of traditional 10s is James Rodriguez. And you know, James also can play anywhere on the pitch. You can put him out wide. You know, you can put him a little bit, you know, behind a striker. But one of the reasons why a player like James can't find a team to really settle in for, a player that good, is because he likes to, you know, to play as a 10, and the game is moving much faster. You know, people, it's much more direct. It's, you know, the ball needs to get from the center back to the forwards much quicker now, and players like James kind of can sit on the ball. They want to pick their spots. They want to test the defense. They want to read the defense and spring a player forward. And that to me is what PT is when he plays as a 10. Obviously, the difference between him and a James is that, you know, his quickness is much, you know, it's much more pronounced than a James Rodriguez. But yeah, I think he can do a little bit of both of those roles as a 10. I'm talking about PT, where, you know, he can drop back. He did it against Colorado. He came and took the ball right off of LGP's foot. You know, he went all the way back, grabbed it, and kind of worked it forward. So he can do that. He can be the 10 that's like that sits behind Joseph, and you know, the responsibility there is to get the ball quick turn and send him forward. So he has the ability. The traditional number 10, yeah, it's kind of a dying art, but there are players that are still doing it. It's really, that's why, you know, the system is so important. You know, does the coach want that? Does the coach want that from his 10? Does Frank de Boer want that from his number 10? And that's what we will continue to, I think, review and observe as the season progresses.
It's going to be a fascinating story. It's going to be an interesting match on Sunday with Kansas City, and we'll see what kind of lineup and what kind of match we get. I don't think it's going to be Kansas City sitting deep. I think we'll get to see Atlanta playing in open space a lot more this time around than they did last week. Felipe, thanks for the time. We'll be on the lookout over at The Athletic for your latest. Athletic SCCR on Twitter. Make sure you're following that. Make sure you're following Felipe Carr as well. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Be good.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and finish up hour number 1 and reset for hour number 2 right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Final segment, hour number 1. Long conversations in hour number 1. That's good. Went for a long time on the women's national team. Long time with our friend Felipe Cardenas.
Still could go on the women's national team.
Still could have kept going with Felipe, but he's got a job to do as well. So lots of stuff to get into in hour number 2, and we're going to start it with the transfer window. It's still open, by the way, because MLS is strange in this regard. It stays open through May 7th. Teams, it's the trade window too, so keep that in mind. It's basically the opportunity for MLS teams to make changes before the summer window. You've got till May 7th. That's it. Who's going to do what? Who needs to do things? Who has things in the hopper? There's some teams that really need to have a deep conversation today and tomorrow about what they can do. No, and I mean that I'm not trying to be funny about that. About like the team's bad. I'm talking specifically about
there are teams that have to really look at themselves and figure out what they're going to do.
But no, that's a bigger conversation. That's we're not going to be competitive this year. I'm talking about a team that is like right there and maybe has a bunch of injuries like Kansas City, or maybe has been missing, something didn't click the way they thought. And they can go out and make one move, because you're not going to be able to line up a whole bunch of moves today, tomorrow. You might be able to get one done before the 7th that will change the trajectory of your team going into the summer. That's what you're looking at. It's not the, oh, man, everything's terrible. It's the, we're one piece away. What can we do? Who can we call? Who can we get? Is there a transfer we can get done? Is there a trade we can get done in the league? We've seen it year after year after year where teams pull it this time of year. Who's going to do that in this next week? We'll talk about the transfer window and anything else you guys want to get into on a Thursday Thoughts edition of the show right after this.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA is a national nonprofit working to transform youth and high school sports so that every child has a positive character-building youth sports experience. PCA provides live and online workshops to train double-goal coaches whose first goal is winning and whose second, more important goal is teaching life lessons through sports. PCA also has workshops for parents and high school student-athletes. For more information, please visit positivecoach.org.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's always motivating me to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Keyboard Cat, YouTube star and shelter pet. Amazing adoption stories start in shelters. Start yours today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down here, May 2nd edition. Thursday Thoughts. We'll be getting into some Thursday Thoughts as we go in this hour of the show. The transfer window closes May 7th for Major League Soccer. DC United has already made a trade. They added Marquinhos Pedroso from Dallas, left back. They've had issues at outside back. They had to get an extra person in. Pedroso should be a big help for them because he hasn't really fit in Dallas this season. There's other teams that need help, and this is the time where it's not like you're going to be able to make a bunch of moves to get help. You're probably talking about one move, whether it's a transfer, something you've been working on, you're trying to get it done before this window closes and you don't have to wait till the summer, like Portland and Brian Fernandez, or it's a trade within the league. And think back to last year where Lee Wynn went from New England to LAFC right around this time. It's a very important time for a lot of teams who are maybe a piece away. Who jumps out to you, John, in that regard of a team that really needs to do something over the next couple of days?
See, and this is, I was trying to think about this in my brain. I mean, obviously, the recent example is Sporting just because of injuries. And
yeah, I would 100% agree.
And, okay, I think that they still have 3 available roster spots too, regardless of what you do. But I think that Sporting, to get where I know Peter Vermes wants to get them, I think that they have to do something. And I'm looking at everyone else in the West, and does RSL do any kind of a tweak since you're right there? How much trust does Giovanni Savarese have in what he's doing right now in Portland? Do you just wait it out, considering you've kind of turned a corner this past week in Columbus and with the work that you did in Toronto? Do you sit tight and just hope that you get home? Then you look in the East, and if you're Chicago, I know are you just waiting on Gaetan to get to full song?
Yes,
and
you're 100% doing that because you just went out and got him. So
yeah,
you're not making another move if you're Chicago.
Yeah, so because I mean, if you just look at the standings, we talked about DC, and right now Philadelphia top of the table, and you've got 10 matches under your belt. Can Jim Curtin do anything financially? Yeah, or is he just going to have to stand pat? I think that's the question.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's just a blanket statement around the league. I don't think Philly needs to do anything. What do they need?
And that's the thing.
They're doing well. But
yeah,
I think you got to look at a team that's struggling or has an issue. Kansas City has issues because of injuries. That's the biggest problem they're having right now. Who is a long-term injury from Kansas City that you need? Not a player is going to be out a couple more weeks. Kind of have to ride that one out. But who's going to be out for a long period of time where you need to figure out some replacements? I think they need something else in the middle of the field. Roger Espinoza out till the fall. I think you need another player there. You look back at the lineup last week, and it was Felipe Gutierrez, who's great going forward, but from a holding role, you tried to give Ilie Sanchez the day off. You couldn't. You had to bring him in, and it changed the game. So you don't really have another holding midfielder. And you look at a team like Cincinnati that has a number of central midfielders that can sit and play in a holding role. Yeah. You could make a trade there that benefits both teams. You have a player in Seth Sinovic who has, for whatever reason, only played one time since, I think, the second leg against Monterrey. And remember, that was a game where Peter Vermes questioned the effort of some of his players. And you haven't seen Sinovic play much since. Is he on the outs? If he is, ship him.
Yeah.
Cincinnati has issues at left back because Greg Garza can't stay healthy. Okay. If you can go get him in your Cincinnati and you give up one of your 20 central midfielders, that's a trade that can help both teams in a lot of ways. Stuff like that, I think, is what you're looking at here. Transfers are a little difficult at this stage. Go ahead.
Do we have an update on either Jerso or Shallowy for this week yet?
Jerso's having surgery. He's out. He had broken wrist, so he's out. Shallowy was a substitute last week, so you would expect that he'd be part of the team this week. Kansas City's issues are not going forward. It's not Jerso and Shallowy, although Jerso being out now creates another issue. It's defending. I mean, you're talking about a back line that had Johan Quase at left back, a converted midfielder who's actually done a pretty good job at left back over the last couple of weeks, but he's pretty risky and he wants to get forward. Andreu Fontas, who you expect to be a starting level player, but he's a very different player than you had in Ike Opara. You turned to Abdul Wadabaye, the Rwandan center back, who I think made his debut as a starter over the weekend, up and down, struggling as you would expect because of the Matt Beasler injury. Graham Zusi is having to do a lot on the back line right now. That's a problem for Kansas City because Zusi is at 32 years old now. You need help defensively, and you need help in the middle defensively as well, because even beyond wanting to spell Ilie from time to time because you don't want to run him into the ground, Espinoza was that 8, that bulldog, who Ilie could sit and pass and control the possession. Espinoza could fight and scrap and win the ball back. You don't have another player like that. You need to go find that. And whether it's an Eric Alexander in Cincinnati who is in and out of the team, if you could somehow get a Victor Ulloa, you have to give up a lot to get an Ulloa. I think Cincinnati's the one that Kansas City should be talking to about a central midfielder. Beasler should be back in the next month. I think you're down to like 2 to 4 weeks, 1 to 3 weeks on him. He could be in the team this weekend. It's a possibility. Peter Vermes is keeping everything pretty close to the vest on that regard. So you're not going to go out and get another center back. Left back, you've got a decision to make. If Sinovic is out, if he's in the doghouse and he's not coming out of it, are you okay with Quase playing there? Are you okay with Kellen Rowe playing there? Do you need to go get somebody? That's a decision you have to make. But Espinoza is the one who's out till the fall, and you don't really have a replacement. Like, that's a move that I think they have to make if they want to be who they can be. On the transfer side, you see Portland trying to get this deal for Brian Fernandez done. Reports are that he is in Portland or in transit to Portland right now. Medical testing will be today, tomorrow. If that timeline is accurate, you would expect that they can get it done. Toronto's another interesting one. Remember the trade recently where LA Galaxy moved up in the allocation order. They got Giancarlo Gonzalez. They had to make 2 trades to do it. They had to move up to number 2, or move up to, I think it was number 2, or number 3, however it worked out. And Toronto was ahead of them. They couldn't get the deal to jump all the way up to Toronto. Toronto didn't want to move back to where the Galaxy were. Toronto now sits number 1 in the allocation order after those trades were done and after the Galaxy used their spot to get Giancarlo Gonzalez. Why? Why would they not just take a lot of stuff to move all the way back to 11 or so? They've got to have something in mind. And the speculation that was out there, and I believe Matt Doyle was running with this in his column about who teams should be looking at in this window, is Omar Gonzalez. Omar Gonzalez isn't playing in Mexico. He hasn't been playing. Final game of the regular season for his club is this weekend. They're not making the playoffs. He's not playing. Could you see an Omar Gonzalez who would have to go through the allocation order? Toronto would have first crack at him. Could you see him in that back line in a few weeks? Absolutely. Would make a lot of sense. Would make a whole lot of sense. So that's another one I think to keep an eye on, or something like that for Toronto. I think they need help in the back. I think Kansas City needs help in the midfield. Portland's trying to get Fernandez in. The other ones that have been... Go ahead.
A team... Is New England ever going to get that DP?
Probably not. Probably not in this window, because they keep saying it's the player is, a club who's playing for a spot in Europe or whatever, and the club's not going to release the player yet. So it doesn't sound like anything's really changed in that regard. So no, I'm not expecting it. Toronto and a TAM winger or TAM attacking player, wherever they fit, not really any smoke there at the moment. So let's talk about Atlanta. Should Atlanta be trying to bring anybody in? They have one senior roster spot. It's open. They don't have an international slot at the moment. You could do some reconfiguring about that, and it sounds like Gordon Wild's about to get his green card. I don't know how much that helps you because you have Anderson Aseyadu, who doesn't have a spot at the moment either, in the senior team if you wanted to use him. Is there a great need that you need to get something done the next couple days? I don't think so, but the question would be left back and Bellows' groin injury. If it's not clearing up anytime soon, you might want to get a little extra cover with the Ambrose injury being long-term. That's not a huge move, but it might be a useful one if there's a player out there that you could slot in. That's really the only thing I could think of.
So if you're looking at a left back, and this is kind of just scrolling out the world map and putting it on the desk in front of you, is there anybody in mind that you've got spot shadowed on the world map when it comes to a left back?
This is stuff that we always do, and it's pointless because are there left backs in Argentina or Ecuador or Germany or the Netherlands or France or Mexico or any other country you want to name that you could go get and would be a good fit? Sure. Come up with a list of 100. Doesn't mean you're going to get them. It's a pointless exercise. It's not the NFL draft where there's a limited pool of players that you're going to be drafting. It's not the NBA where, there's a little bit of a global market, but not that much. It's endless. You go find somebody. Yeah, it's easy. Are they going to be the right fit? Is there going to be somebody? I mean, look, I'm not scouting every league in the world for left backs. Nobody is. Don't let them fool you, tell you that they are. Lucy Rushton and the scouting office for Atlanta United is. Other clubs are because that's their job. But no, there's not that. In the league, which is probably the more likely scenario here, because you're talking about essentially replacing Mikey Ambrose's role in this team while he's out. So you're not trying to go make a big high-profile signing. You're trying to get a depth piece if Bellows not going to be ready to go in a week or two. You're looking at somebody in the league who's on a bench, like Pedroso was for Dallas. And you're probably looking at somebody who's domestic, so you don't have to worry about the complications of the international slot. So that's what you're looking at. It narrows your market down a little bit. You're looking at a backup. Is there one out there? Yeah, there's players in the league who could spell you for a little bit of time. They're there. It just depends on who's willing to deal with them because not many teams have a glut of left backs and are willing to deal right now.
That's why I asked the question. I mean, trying to figure out through juggling the idea of the roster spot, internationals, and what might or might not be a thought pattern. But yeah, your initial reaction of maybe and left back to me would have been if you were to ask me about it, that's what I would have said. It's like, kind of, maybe, and then do something over on the left-hand side.
If the right player emerged who was domestic or had a green card, could play left side, could play right side as well in a pinch, it'd be great. It's not something you want to give up a lot for. So that's the other part of it is you're talking about depth. You're not. This always comes up when we talk about making moves in a roster. You can't just go get another starting level player. One, you've got a cap to deal with. You've got allocation money to deal with. You don't have an unlimited supply. And two, you're not bringing in a player to be a long-term starter for 5 years. You're bringing in a player to be depth and probably be depth for a short period of time. So that's a very specific type of player.
Like the Boswell transaction.
Yeah, I mean, could it be a Seth Sinovic? If he's on the outs in Kansas City and they don't want him, sure, it could be. I don't think you have a player to give them back if they wanted to swap players because they need help in the midfield, and you don't really have a midfielder that you could deal right now that would help them immediately. Would they take allocation money or a draft pick or something like that. Maybe. Could happen. But that's the type of profile that we're talking about here. So, when you talk about players internationally, one league that you could be looking at, and I'm not saying from an Atlanta perspective, just from MLS as a whole, is Argentina, because your regular season is over. You're in the Copa de la Superliga, and some teams have already been eliminated there. You have the Copa Argentina finishing up. There's teams that have been eliminated there. There's teams who their year is done until the fall season starts. There's players that could be potentially available. River Plate is not done yet, but TNT Sports in Argentina is already linking Ignacio Fernandez to the LA Galaxy. Now, I don't know how this one works, because 6 to 8 million euro is the expected price tag. That would make him a designated player. He's a 29-year-old central midfielder. There's no fit for him right now as they're currently constructed. They don't have a DP slot. Could they make a move? Yeah, sure. You have Roman Alessandrini, who's out until the fall. You can't buy anybody out because you already did that for Giovanni Dos Santos. Now that Alessandrini is injured and going to miss most of the season, would he be more willing to do a restructure to take him down to a TAM? Maybe, to get an extra year on the deal. I don't know. It's possible. But this one for the Galaxy, it feels like, hey, this is a player who might go to MLS. The Galaxy are a big team. Let's make that link. But Ignacio Fernandez, 29 years old, is the type of player who could be potentially coming to MLS. I think it's more of a summer window move, though. Another potential summer window move is a player that I think is fairly well known, Shinji Kagawa. He's at Dortmund. He's on loan with Besiktas. 30 years old, playmaker. We know what he can do. I think he'd be a great fit for the league. Love to see him in Major League Soccer. And reportedly, Borussia Dortmund's asking for $3 million for a deal. That's reasonable. That's really reasonable. There's teams who could use a player like Shinji Kagawa. Again, summer window move. But he's a player I could 100% see in MLS.
I mean, considering his pedigree and you look at pedigree, you look at price tag, you look at experience. So I think that's an interesting get for somebody that wants to go down that road. Yeah,
$3 million's completely affordable. Doug Robertson of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and we'll talk to Doug tomorrow, tweeted out a few minutes ago that George Bello not out with the first team for training this morning, being evaluated, waiting on word. So keep that in mind with the window closing. If it's a longer-term injury for Bello, and we've seen him twice in 2019, once in Costa Rica, once with Atlanta United too. If it's a longer-term injury, you might need an extra outside back, primarily on the left side. And that could be something you go try to address before this window closes on May 7th, where then you can't add anybody until the summer window opens in July. It's going to be interesting around the league. I think there's going to be some trades. There always are. It seems like there's always at least somebody who makes a big, bold move before this window closes. Landon Donovan came back to the league, to the LA Galaxy in this time frame. You had the Lee Win trade last year. You've had others historically. Somebody's going to make a big move. Maybe a few teams are going to make a big move. Portland looks like they're going to make one on an attacking winger in Fernandez. Who else might make a move? We'll see what happens. Let us know your Thursday thoughts. We'll get into those starting next. Use the hashtag Thursday Thoughts. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. We'll be right back after this.
Today's show is presented by Apelinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
We're back. Soccer Down here. Thursday Thoughts edition. John's just out of control today. You have no idea. Let's get into the Thursday Thoughts on the timeline. What questions do we have, John?
Well, one, and I thought, well, first off, Nathan Pugh, let's go backwards. He says, transfers and trades, all I'm getting from the segment is it's sporting or leaking. Atlanta should be licking their lips to get on the score sheet, though it sounds like Atlanta won't keep a clean sheet. Sorry, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Kansas City with Johnny Russell, who's creating chances for fun these days and scoring on some of them. Felipe Gutierrez, same thing. Christian Nemeth, same thing. You got a lot of attacking players, and Kansas City's just not a team right now that can sit and win games 1-0 or 2-1. They're going to score goals, but they're going to leak some goals. So Sunday could be a very different type of match than we saw last week.
Tafka, going back to our segment on Thursdays with Felipe, he says, can't say enough about the work of Felipe and all the soccer coverage in the U.S. now. Looking back even just 10 years ago, it's incredible how far we've come. Damn near brings me to tears at Soccer Down here.
I mean, 10 years ago, you had Twitter just really starting to get a little bit of traction. You still had, Big Soccer and the message boards as a place for coverage and people talking about the game. You didn't really have much in the way of regular, newspaper media at that stage. Stephen Goff, you had Graham Jones out in Los Angeles, you had Frank Delapa at the Boston Globe. That was about it at the time. A few other people around the country who were doing different things, but also would hop onto the soccer beat. So very different times. You didn't have an Athletic, you didn't have a Pro Soccer USA, you didn't have any of that.
And I know that in our early talks, when we first started to get to know each other a handful of years ago, all of your discussions about message boards and things like that being one of the larger sources for information. It honestly just blew me away when you were talking about it from that perspective.
Oh, you just didn't have the same conversation. I mean, as a kid, for me, and this is going way further back than that, I grew up listening to, sports talk radio, sports on the radio. I grew up reading the Atlanta Journal and the Atlanta Constitution. Reading sporting news or Sports Illustrated or Sport Magazine.
Soccer Digest.
And Soccer Digest wasn't easy to find. Soccer America wasn't easy to find. You had to have a subscription if you wanted it because it wasn't available in bookstores. You'd occasionally get a World Soccer magazine in a Barnes & Noble or Joseph Beth bookstore. And that was about it. 442 started becoming more common to read, but it's not American soccer. That was really down to Soccer America and Soccer Digest to a degree. There just wasn't much. And I always wanted I wanted to have the same conversations that we have on a regular basis about the Falcons, about the Braves, about the Hawks, about Georgia football, about SEC football, what have you. I wanted to have those same conversations in the soccer world, and luckily we're able to have those on a pretty regular basis. It's just it's a different time, and hopefully, kids who are growing up today benefit from that, and they don't have to look so hard to watch a game on TV, or they don't have to look so hard to hear or read something about the game and learn more. I think it'll benefit soccer in the United States in the long run overall, and it's just going to continue to grow.
Eichmann, with our discussion that took up the first half hour, says that the world isn't catching up to the women's national team. It has already caught up. Over the last 4 to 6 years, they've gotten caught up in their pride and forgotten to prepare. Pride comes before the fall.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's pride. It just feels like ignorance to me in some ways, in that it's just, we don't even need to really worry about it because we're good. And it's just not even putting the resources to it that you're putting towards the men's side. And there's just no excuse. I mean, to say, well, we don't have to go get a general manager yet. Yeah, you do. Like the women's general manager feels like an afterthought, whereas the men's one was a big, long process. That doesn't make any sense. You've had these issues at the youth national team level for a number of cycles now. It's not like it just started. Why is nothing changing there? There's just so many questions, and the world hasn't completely caught up on the women's side because the U.S. is still very, very, very good. I think as a team, probably, actually, you might have got caught up on a couple. From an athletic standpoint, I think you have a team that is probably the most athletic, and they're more technical than they've ever been. It's just that development has been slow. They started from, especially on the athletic side, the U.S. women started way ahead of everybody else. Now you're getting some who can run and have the same strength that the U.S. has, and you're getting others who are more technical and more talented soccer players. The U.S., I think, is still the best combination of both, but is that going to be enough? And we'll have to see, because then you're getting into the tactical side of it from the management perspective, and we'll see how that evolves. I don't think the U.S. is as far along as they should be in that regard. I think on the women's side, the game is still too defined by speed, power, verticality, as opposed to technique. And that has to change because the game's just evolved. The women's game has evolved too much around the world for the U.S. to just outrun and outpower teams.
Jim Lepp has a question. It says, it seems to me that if the CONCACAF Champions League, and that's another thing we haven't gotten into yet, was last night's final, says that if the Champions League remains a high priority for the side, the Open Cup may well be the most attainable path. Have you heard anything from the club related to Open Cup?
No, and I don't know if that's true. I mean, I think still your ultimate goal is to win MLS Cup, and that gets you in. Supporter Shield, and when we talked about it coming in, that was always going to be a challenge because of CONCACAF at the beginning, and you didn't get as deep into CONCACAF as you wanted. Kansas City's dealing with that more because they had the extra games against Monterrey in the semifinal round that Atlanta didn't have, and it's showing a little bit for Kansas City along with their injuries. Open Cup is a very important tournament, and I think it becomes a little more important, but still, let's be real about what happens in the first couple of matches. You're going to be missing potentially Pity Martinez to Argentina in Copa America. You're going to be missing Joseph Martinez to Venezuela in the Copa America. Could be missing Darlington Nagbe, Brad Gazan to the U.S. in the Gold Cup. We'll see. Nagbe, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. He should be part of that team. He seems to be a perfect fit for Greg Berhalter's system. We'll see if it happens. Ezequiel Barco should be back. Actually, it's not a definite. He might be back for the first game. Depends on how Argentina does at the U20s. Waiting on the U.S. roster to see if Andrew Carlton goes. I think it's more of a long shot, but that'll be announced next Friday. Trying to think who else could be gone with national team duty. There's going to be some others. But you're not going to be at full strength for your first match, maybe your first two matches in Open Cup play. So that does factor in. It is also an opportunity to see, okay, the guys who've been really close, a John Gallagher, a Gordon Wild. It's a chance to actually bring up a Wesley Dacus or somebody like that to see, okay, you can bring them up for an Open Cup match. Let's see what Dacus looks like next to a Leandro Gonzalez-Perez or a Michael Parkhurst. You want to take that opportunity if you get it here. We'll see how the draw goes, and we'll see how the availability goes. For me, Atlanta should do what it's got to do with the roster it's going to have in those first two games to get deeper into the tournament. And then once you get into the quarterfinal type of level, you go for that tournament. You completely go for it.
Percy Herrera with a question, or a Thursday thought. Sorry, I should be phrasing it that way. Seattle came out and said that they won the appeal on Christian Roldan's red card, eligible to play this weekend against Minnesota. So Percy, in turn, says, imagine if we got the 70-plus minutes back to see what would have been a great game. Does this count against Ted Unkel at all?
Oh, yeah. Although this is where VAR gets it complicated. I mean, Unkel made the ultimate decision to give the red to Roldan, and now that's been rescinded, so a mistake was made. I'd love to know who thought what as that whole thing evolved, because it's not like Unkel showed a yellow and then moved it up to a red. I don't think he showed anything to Roldan because it all popped off and Unkel was trying to get control of it first. So then you go to the VAR and you hear from your referee in the booth and you look at the video and you make this decision. So Unkel got it wrong. How hard was he being lobbied in this? And that's the part we don't know. Because I think the VAR, there's blame there too. There's definite blame there too. The angle, I'd have to go back and watch the broadcast. The angle that, for me, made it clear, I wonder if Unkel had that. Where it looks pretty obvious that Atuesta comes in with a hard shove to Roldan, kind of in the side and a little in the back, and Roldan's arm goes up and makes contact with Atuesta's face. I wonder if Unkel had that view or if he just saw the hand to the face and didn't have the full context. Those are the things we don't know. So, yeah, there's definitely questions for Ted Unkel here because a red card was rescinded. Anytime that happens, hey, you messed up. Why did he mess up? That's the part I want to know. If he didn't have all the information, if he wasn't getting help from the rest of his crew on that, that's something that needs to be addressed as well. Would have been a better match, but honestly, I think in some ways it helped Seattle figure out that, hey, we've got to sort things out in the midfield and defensively because we can't just run and gun with everybody.
And that goes back to the question that we had in the first segment this hour. Do they do anything leading up to the trade deadline?
What do they need?
Well, I mean, they're leaky at the back. I would think something along the lines of defense to try to shore things up, possibly some depth pieces maybe.
I mean, I worry about them defensively. They've given up 12 goals. They've scored 18. They're 12 that they've given up out of teams in... Well, actually, it's not that bad. Montreal had their crazy 7 though, so Montreal's a weird one. Toronto's given up 13. They need to build out of the back. In the East, Philadelphia and DC are the tops. They've given up 10 in 10 matches. Seattle's given up 12 and 9. I think for me with Seattle, the questions are: do you feel like Roman Torres is going to round into form and you can get another year out of him? He played pretty well in this one. He played much better in this one than he had been playing previously. Chad Marshall, what's your injury issue there? Is there an extra center back that you could go find? Because I don't think you're looking for a starter. I think you're looking for depth just in case you need it. And is there a player like that out there that you can go add? That's not an easy get. Who has an extra center back that they'd be willing to part with right now? I don't know.
And then let me finish up this segment. We didn't get the chance to talk about the CONCACAF Champions League final yet from last night.
Monterrey did the thing. Gignac got a goal late. that was an amazing goal, but it was almost too late. Yeah, it's lovely, but they lost. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But this is the thing, and this is something that I think we get caught up in sometimes. Look, that goal was great. They lost. It doesn't mean anything. It's not going to mean anything. It's a highlight that's not going to get showed. Because why do you show it? You lost. Tigres didn't do enough to win this thing. They lost 1-0 at home. They did not start APG, and I don't know why. He played 90 in the league the last few matches. Either you shouldn't have played him 90 in those matches to have him available for 90 in CONCACAF Champions League, or something unexpected happened. I think it was mismanaged. Tuca Ferretti has been around the block. He'll take the criticism. He's fine with it. It's not going to hurt him in the long run. But you mismanaged it. You needed him from the start. He wasn't 100%. You could tell he was laboring a little bit, but he's capable of magic. You needed that. You needed that lift. Tigres just did not create enough, and then they gave up a goal early. You can't concede that penalty. You can't give up that goal when you're already chasing the game. Monterrey managed it really, really well. They didn't let the Gignac goal affect them at the end. They didn't let it, wreck their concentration. They handled the rest of the match. They see it out, and they lift the crown that they were built to do. They were the best team in the tournament. They're the best team on the continent. They've spent the money to be that team. They should have won it, and they did. That's what it came down to. And, it's just so funny to see the reactions. Yes, Atlanta United should feel a little bit better about the way they performed against Monterrey. I think they performed as well as Tigres did against Monterrey, and they performed a whole lot better than Sporting Kansas City did against Monterrey. Alianza of El Salvador should feel really good about how they performed against Monterrey because they took them to the brink. That's true. Like, you can be disappointed with Atlanta's results in the first part of the season, but that's a fact. It's 3-1. Yes, I've seen the questions already and the substitutions. Kevin from Charlotte.
Yes.
It's hard watching it. Still wonder if Atlanta had handled the subs differently in Monterrey. Still not over it. The third goal is the killer, and it was something that I felt like watching it live, that was where you had to regroup and not concede a third. I'm okay with everything up to the second one because you had been playing really well. The Pizarro substitution about 9-10 minutes before the second goal started to change things in Monterrey's favor. You needed to sit back and close up shop after the second goal and get out of there at 2. It would have changed the second match. Second match, if you get an early goal, it's still a different match, too. There's a lot of what-ifs out of that. Welcome to Champions League. Welcome to Champions League. Juventus sitting at home with a lot of what-ifs right now. Real Madrid sitting at home with what-ifs. Manchester City sitting at home with a lot of what-ifs. The margins are very thin. It's the best of the best. Little things can hurt you. And sometimes you have to go through them to learn the margins. Atlanta got a harsh lesson. That third goal was the killer. The second goal, I think the second one, a lot of people are factoring in on all the subs would have changed everything. 2-0, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Because you had bounced back after an initial onslaught in the second half, and Atlanta had Monterrey on their heels. And you're reluctant to change that up. I get it. Cool all the way up to the second goal, but I thought that was where you needed a sub, and that was where you needed a change in mentality to defend and see the game out. Didn't get it. You only got one in the second leg. You did put Monterrey under pressure. You did defeat them for the first time in 2019. Those things did happen. Monterrey did not come in here and not play. That is an incorrect statement, in my opinion. But Monterrey was the better team. They were the team with more talent. They were the team with more depth. And they were the team that was better in the 180 minutes. But the margin was not that wide for Atlanta United. And that should be a positive for Atlanta United. It's not a moral victory. Don't misquote me. But it should be a positive in the way that Atlanta United handled that series, because it was not a wide margin difference between those two teams. I don't think it was. Let's take a break, come back, wrap everything up with more Thursday thoughts right after this.
Today's show is presented by Apalinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back. Final segment, Soccer Down here, May 2nd, Thursday. Thursday Thoughts. Taking yours on Twitter at Soccer Down here. Use the Thursday Thoughts hashtag. Tomorrow on the show, Mike Conti, 92.9 The Game, Doug Robertson, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. All of your usual preview stuff for Sporting Kansas City. We'll get into it in hour number 2 tomorrow. But what are the Thursday thoughts out there spinning around in the SDH universe?
Okay. Well, first off, do you want me to ask my philosophical question about Champions League first, or you want me to go to Twitter?
Well, yeah, you had a Thursday thought. That's valid.
Well, okay. Well, I just wanted to, to put a bow on Champions League. I just wanted to get your observations of the experience in general and what you'll take away from it and what Atlanta United fans should take away from their first experience in CONCACAF Champions League.
I love the tournament. I want to see it grow. I want to see it become a true Champions League again, where you have a group stage and all that. It's something that, look, there's a much bigger picture than that when it comes to our conversation about Copa Libertadores and all of those types of things. I think at the very, very big picture, there are discussions that need to be had about where CONCACAF, North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America all intersect in the game. Does it end up becoming, as some have speculated, that World Cup qualifying is a combined process? If it is, I think the club game should be the same. And yes, there's travel. Yes, there's logistics. Yes, there's going to be things to figure out. But these are very big picture things that I think MLS has to talk about. The CONCACAF level, I want to see more than just knockout rounds for MLS teams. I think you need those experiences. And I do understand from a scheduling conflict and from a calendar perspective, there's challenges. Yep, there are. Still needs to be figured out to be more than this. It shouldn't have just been 4 games, 2 opponents. I would love to see more than that. I think it would benefit the MLS teams involved. I think it would benefit the Central American teams, the Caribbean teams in a huge way to get more competitive matches. Now, the CONCACAF League for them is great, but they're not playing the MLS teams. They're not playing the Liga MX teams in that. Would love to see that evolve and grow. But as it's currently constructed, MLS teams are just not good enough. Flat out. Doesn't mean MLS isn't growing, doesn't mean the level's not good, doesn't mean any of that stuff. It means that the Mexican clubs, and especially the top Mexican clubs, are better right now. Monterrey is a club that could compete with anybody in this hemisphere. Monterrey had their most expensive player in Maxi Meza come on as a late sub in the final. He's not even a regular starter for them at the moment. That says a lot. You have players from Monterrey heavily involved in a number of national teams, and you have a team that's, a good 18, 20 deep with talent coming through. It's a big club, and they act like a big club, and they are the deserving champions. Tigres, big club. Club America, Chivas, big clubs. Cruz Azul, Pumas, maybe a slight step down, but big clubs. MLS has big clubs, but not that big. There's a few things in place for me that I think if MLS wants to win it, they have to spend more. They have to have deeper rosters, and they have to figure out the scheduling component, because it can't be your first competitive match. It can't be the schedule that Atlanta had, where you go to Costa Rica, a week later you come back, you play on Thursday night at home. Luckily, you didn't travel for the second leg. You're at home on Thursday night, you play your league opener on the road on Sunday, and then you go to Mexico to face the best team you've ever faced midweek the following week. Come back home for your second league game, your home opener, then you get the second leg of that. It's very difficult. If it was flipped, Monterrey would have problems with that, although they have a deeper roster to deal with it. It's hard to hit the ground running. It's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that if MLS wants to win this thing, they have to do better. But from our limited exposure in it and our 2 trips with Herediano and with Monterrey and dealing with the clubs, I can't say enough about how great the experience was in Costa Rica. How great everybody from the club at Herediano to the local radio, everybody was just great to us. And same in Monterrey, same with the club there, same with the city. Everything was easy, everything was comfortable, and we were able to do our jobs, and the team was able to do its job. That's what you want. It's a competition that has a lot of potential that is untapped, in my opinion, and I hope it's something that continues to grow, and I hope MLS realizes that for all the strides that it's making, and it 100% is, there's still a gap. And just because MLS is making strides doesn't mean that Monterrey's not making strides and doesn't have more ambition to spend even more. Doesn't mean that Tigres now isn't going to have more ambition to win this next year. Doesn't mean that Club America and Chivas, who didn't get to the CONCACAF Champions League, aren't going to be angry about that. The MLS is growing, but the Mexican clubs are growing as well. And that means MLS has to grow at a more rapid pace, and they have to figure out the scheduling issue.
KFC with a thought on the weekend for his hashtag Thursday Thoughts. Expecting outside play to be decisive. Was afraid of the 2019 Jerso. Lucky there. This seems like a game that could be open, exciting play. Will the Game of Thrones crowd watch and know an entertaining game took place?
Yeah, we'll see about that. I do not know the overlap of the whole fan base with the Game of Thrones crowd. I'll be curious to see the hardcore fans. Are they going to, record the Game of Thrones episode? Or are they going to record the Atlanta United match? I'll be intrigued to see how that plays out. But it should be a fun game. I mean, Kansas City's a very good team, and they're dealing with a difficult spot. They've played a lot of matches in a short period of time, and the injuries have piled up along with that. And it's another thing. That's an issue. I mean, it happened with Toronto. It's now happening with Kansas City. It doesn't feel like Kansas City has the long-term injury issues that Toronto dealt with all of last year, but they've got a bunch in a short period of time. And how they navigate it will define what happens to them this season. But I think they're going to be out to entertain, and I think right now they're realizing that, hey, we've got to just go outgun people. That sets itself up for a really fun match, and it sets itself up for a match that Atlanta United has not had in 2019 yet. Nobody's come out and run with Atlanta United in a game where you feel like it's even or you have an advantage. Monterrey came out and came at Atlanta United in the first leg at home, and Atlanta knew they had to come in and defend. The second leg, Monterrey was safe. They didn't bunker, but they were safe. I mean, they weren't, like crazy attacking wide open. They were conservative, but they did not bunker. You haven't had that match. So I'm excited to see it. I think it should be a good one for Atlanta to get going in the attack. They're going to have space, and we'll see what they do with it.
Sherbs with a question that lends itself to action that we saw yesterday from the Champions League play. Says that people went really crazy over an ideally spotted free kick that Kratz could make in his sleep.
Sherbs. That was a little more than a ideally spotted free kick that Kevin Kratz could make in his sleep. I think that's a little oversimplification there. A little bit. It was a spectacular free kick, and it was at the end of a spectacular performance, and Barcelona honestly probably should have had a couple more to put it away. Liverpool didn't, the scoreline, it's one of those weird ones where if you had told me that it finished 5-0 based off the chances that Barcelona had late, I'd say, yep, not surprised. But Liverpool didn't get run out of the building in a game like that, which is wild to say, but they had some moments. I don't know how Mo Salah does not score with everybody falling down and he puts it off the post.
Yes.
I have to disagree with the oversimplification of Messi's free kick. It was an outstanding free kick. The bend on that was immense. And here's the difference. And here's why Kevin Kratz doesn't score that one in his sleep. It's a lefty versus a righty. Kratz and the bend with his right foot is going to be at the goalkeeper and then trailing away. That's a little bit easier for a goalkeeper to deal with. Messi's, the ball was always wide of the goal and then comes back in. That's the most difficult for a goalkeeper to deal with.
Trains with a train of thought this morning on Thursday Thoughts. And it was posted at 4:52 this morning.
Trains. Get some sleep.
What kind of owner would you be in MLS? Paragraph.
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on how big my bank account is.
Yeah. Well, and so here's what Train says.
Okay.
I think I'd be the owner who spent big on academy and first-team facilities, recruit kids from all over and have them stay in a dorm, 2 second teams, one in USL, one in League One, hedge my bets on the long odds, commit the minimum on first-team players as I wait for a golden generation from the academy. Garber Bucks would sustain me.
So you'd be the Red Bulls. Not surprised that would be the response. I don't know if that works. There's no guarantees. That's the one thing is there's not a guarantee that, okay, if you do that you produce enough talent coming through to hit all your positions and be good. Don't think that works. There's no guarantee if you go out and you spend and you don't invest in the academy and you just go buy players that they're all going to hit. No guarantees there. Players don't always transition well. Players are sometimes slow to adjust. There's no guarantee. You want to give yourself as many outs as possible. So I don't think you pick one or the other and go all in. I think you want to be able to do both. I think if you're talking about that means you're pretty well resourced. So what I would do is I would have as a top 5 facility for training, for headquarters, for all that in the league. I would want to be best in class there. I would have as large of an academy as I can maintain and have the personnel for, and continually invest in their development, not the kids' development, but the coaches and the administrators' development in the academy. So they are constantly best in class. Because you want to have those outs. You want to have, 150 kids that are on all of your academy teams, plus another, network of kids who are in your area that you can call upon if you need to expand it, if there's a late bloomer or what have you. Okay, you want to have that all in place because you want to have as many opportunities for those kids to become superstars as possible. Cool. You give them the facilities, you give them the people to develop them, you're good. You want to invest in scouting. because you do want to be able to not just go get the obvious ones. I mean, signing Pity Martinez is obvious. South American Player of the Year. Signing Zlatan, obvious. You know who he is. Signing, even for the Galaxy, Giancarlo Gonzalez, obvious. You're talking about a Costa Rican national team player in Serie A who's been in the league. Makes total sense. You don't have to have a huge scouting department to do that. You need to, develop the relationship and get the signing done, but investing in a scouting department is not going to help you with that deal. Investing in a scouting department is going to help you find a Eric Remedi. It's going to help you find a player like that you can get for a good price and outperforms what you spend. That's what you want. So you got to invest in the scouting department in a big way. And the network of scouts and whatever infrastructure is needed for that, that's another big area of investment for me. That's not the same type of investment going out and signing 5 players at $20 million a piece. You're spending less than that, and I think you can get a greater return. So that would be another element that I would invest in. The team side of it, USL Championship team I would have, and I would go next with a USL League 2 team. I would wait to see if I needed a USL League 1 team. I might be able to bridge that gap with loans, additional loans outside of the organization for players to get extra minutes in places. USL League 2 I would do for academy, for also my academy kids who maybe aren't quite ready to get minutes in USL Championship, but I want to push them a little bit further than they're getting on the youth side. And also my academy players who go on to college that weren't ready to sign a pro deal to keep them in the fold. So I would go with my first team, my USL Championship team, my USL League 2 team, which is an amateur team. That'd be next. And in the way that I spend on the team, a lot of it would depend on, okay, what does my academy produce? What do my scouts produce? What do they go find? What do I need? But I would always want to be able to exploit opportunities, and whether it is depending on the market I'm in, a Chicharito, go out and get that I know is going to move tickets, I know is going to move the community, and I know is going to get people interested in me. I would want to be able to do that and want to be able to exploit those opportunities as they come. It's not so much to go out and sign a whole bunch of expensive players, but I'm not going to say I will not do it. And the reason that I make that differentiation, and the reason that, I think Trains is obviously pointing you towards a Red Bulls model. The reason that I would say hold tight on that is look at the drop-off for the Red Bulls in attention and in attendance from when they had superstars to when they don't. They've been more successful on the field. They've been a better team on the field. But they're not getting that attention, and long-term, that's not sustainable. And then look at how tickets have moved this week for Zlatan coming to town. I think that tells you that you have a market that wants to see some star power. And you can create great players like Tyler Adams, but Tyler Adams is not a star in New York City. And that's something to figure out, and that's why I was a little surprised that NYC talked about going away from signing names and going to this. It's a risk, because if your fan base is responding to you by not coming out in as big a numbers, I think they're telling you what they want. And if you're not able to sell the story in the media that, hey, I'm developing my own talents. Tyler Adams is one of the best American players to ever come through the system, and he is. It's not moving the needle. You want to do both. You don't want to get yourself down one road and not be able to have a turn. So invest in the academy, invest in scouting to create every opportunity to have competitive advantage on your cap, on your usage of allocation money, on making money on later sales. All of that is very, very important. But you also want to be in the mix for that transformational player that could become available. And, and like for Houston, it would be a Chicharito. Completely transform that club.
Then to bring everything full circle for the show, at GTUTD1, I'll give you another name being left out when it comes to the women's national team. The best female goalkeeper in the U.S. is Aubrey Bledsoe of the Washington Spirit.
She's in the mix. I mean, you don't have the goalkeeper position settled. You have Alyssa Nair, who has not been convincing. You have Ashlyn Harris, who I think is the better option, but she hasn't completely won the job either. You have Franch from Portland, who had a big error in the She Believes Cup, so you wonder about, okay, has she got the confidence of the team in front of her? Right now, you don't have a goalkeeper that inspires confidence on the field, and that's a huge problem going into a World Cup. Bledsoe was a player that should have been looked at more. Jane Campbell's a player that should have been looked at more. There's a number of players who, when that position is open, and it's been open since Hope Solo's departure, you have to turn over every stone to go figure out, well, who is it? And that's a critical one that I don't think you just keep turning back to somebody that hasn't won it. So you kept going back and forth between Nair and Harris. If neither one is going to grab that position and not let it go, you look beyond that. And there's a number of goalkeepers in the league that I think should have been looked at. Nicole Barnhart's another one who was there as a backup to Hope Solo for a long time. A lot of experience in the league. Could she have stepped in and given you that confidence? Maybe. But I just don't feel like enough was done to look at all the different options at goalkeeper and at a number of other positions. And we'll see if it affects them this summer. I worry that it will. I hope I'm wrong.
One last thing before we go. Brian Bell, and thanks for following us on the Twitters, Brian. He asks, did you catch the animated bit on the UEFA build-up joking about MLS as the retirement home for international players? I don't mind. Send them on, and we'll keep selling our guys for record dollars.
No, I didn't catch it because I'm sick of that nonsense, to be honest. Is there some truth to it? Yeah, there was. I mean, yes, the Zlatan signing does make you wonder, but I hate to see American media outlets do that nonsense. I do. It frustrates me. It really, really frustrates me. An organization that has not invested in the American game. They went out and they grabbed the rights to the Champions League. I don't think they've done a great job with it. They've put too much of it behind a paywall for streaming based on where it had been previously. They haven't put out a product that compelled me to go buy the streaming rights to that. I didn't.
I watched the Spanish broadcast.
I watched the Spanish broadcast. I think they treat the game with more reverence. And the cartoon's funny. Like, the cartoons are funny, and they're a nice thing. But what is the coverage of the event known for under the new partnership? The cartoons and a lot of jokes in this. I'm not even getting into that, but just a lot of jokes and a very light presentation in your studio work. What's the competition known for in Spanish and the way it's presented? It's a big freaking deal. I don't think soccer in the United States benefits from being treated like a joke. And, whether it's the way you look at MLS, which is not one of their properties, so they have no reason to treat it with any seriousness, but I thought that was disrespectful. And I think the way that they treat the competition that they bought the rights to, I just don't think they do enough to make it a big deal. I don't like the presentation. It feels like too much of a happy fun time as opposed to the semifinals of the biggest club competition in the world. And it shouldn't feel that way. I think the game is sold better in the United States by treating it as a big deal rather than a bunch of inside jokes. And I hope that we get more of that. I think we get that in Spanish, and I really do appreciate it. And we get that from a lot of different presentations of the league, whether it's on the national partners, whether it's individual clubs. And I hope we get more of it because I think the game benefits from it, and I think the fan base responds to it. I mean, yes, we like a good joke from time to time too, but not in our overall presentation of a competition. I don't think it's that funny.
I guess I should be glad that I missed this, considering what I think about the presentation of the Champions League domestically.
It's a different thing. It's a completely different thing because it's a funny cartoon that's a sidebar thing. But that's the thing is they've done nothing overall for that not to be one of the bigger stories in it. And when I saw that, they're going to take a crack at MLS with an American, company that is not doing anything to support the domestic league, I'm not a fan of that. If you're not partnered with the league, that's fine. But taking shots when, honestly, I don't think your work has been that great to begin with, and just the presentation, the overall vibe of your presentation has been very light. Champions League shouldn't be treated that way.
I agree. Circle gets the square. We're caught up.
Well, that's just my thoughts anyway. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 o'clock. We'll have NWSL in 10 coming up in the next couple of days. We'll have USL League 1 in 10 coming up over the next couple of days. Charleston Battery Weekly, Greenville Triumph Weekly, all the stuff. And then at 1 o'clock today, your U.S. Women's National Team roster will be unveiled. Make sure you're checking out all of your U.S. Soccer social media channels for that. We'll be active on Twitter, chiming in with our thoughts. We expect to see Ali Krieger in that, according to Doug McIntyre at Yahoo Sports. And according to Stephen Goff, we're expecting to see Morgan Bryan make her return to the U.S. Women's National Team. We'll see if McCall Zerboni gets in. We'll see if Jess McDonald gets in. There's a lot of questions, and we'll see what gets answered at 1 o'clock today with the World Cup roster for the U.S. women. But we'll be back tomorrow morning to talk about all of it, 9 to 11-ish, because, it's what happens sometimes as I look at the clock and it's 11:08. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot.